Um, good deal. You know, it's May 17th, another episode of Real Fridays, and where it's real talk on mortgage, housing, and real estate with Brock Cassidy, Jeremy Potter, who's always about 2 minutes late, and myself, Rick Rock. We do have a phenomenal special guest, a Jon Hill, a mortgage rap god in the mortgage arena, who's one of the senior leaders at Total Expert. We're super happy to have as our special guest here on the show. How are you doing, Jon?
Good, man. Good. I wish I was a senior leader. Actually, I don't wish I was a senior leader. I'm just a guy, man. I'm just a guy. You know, everything is going well.
I look at senior leadership as a function of influence, you know, in the industry, and certainly you've deserved that, you know, for sure. I mean, you've been in the business a long time. You've had a variety of roles, and but you've really found a phenomenal sort of opportunity, I think, both for Total Expert and, of course, Total Expert to you. And I think that's great. You've been with Total Expert, what, 3 or 4 years?
4 years. 4 years this past Sunday. So it literally celebrated my 4-year anniversary on Sunday. So yeah, no, I mean, I couldn't be happier. I don't think that I've ever been happier in my career since I've started here at Total Expert. It's just a different type of a culture, different leadership. You know, I mean, we all know Joe, who is an extraordinary visionary, and so I'm very fortunate to be where I'm at and finally found a home.
No, that's fantastic. So what we do, you've probably watched the show a few times. What we try to do is keep we try to stay away from sort of sales pitches and really focus on sort of the nuts and bolts of you know, what we do in the business. You know, we try not to criticize companies, but we also try to just have real talk about maybe some struggles that companies might be having that are totally understandable, and just sort of have a good industry commentary, because mortgage tech, I mean, there's nothing, in my view, Scott Cooley years ago put together a website called mortgagetechgraveyard.com.
Yeah.
I still think it's still up, actually, but and he used to catalog throughout the 2000s every single mortgage company, every single mortgage tech company. Welcome, Jeremy Potter from the great city of Detroit. In his famous. You've actually straightened out that you're showing a bit of window. Usually it's kind of a split between the curtain and the backdrop. So I actually love I love the diversity there. Some flowers in the background through the window and the tree, and that's nice. I didn't know they had flowers in Detroit.
That's what I'm trying to do, is change perceptions. People have misconceptions of Detroit. They have for years, and we're the next belt. We're the heart of the next belt for a reason. And most people don't know that. So Jon and I are constantly inviting people here to see what we have to offer. And this is part of what you can own here in Detroit if you'd like to move here.
Yeah, nice. Not only are we were kind of a hotbed and the mecca of mortgage in the country.
Brock, do you see the irony in Jeremy calling it the next belt when their Wi-Fi is not, like, are you still on dial-up, or what's happening right now? Do you have fiber in Detroit?
Why did my voice go out again? No, man, it's Xfinity.
You and Jon,
fiber, baby.
Got everybody.
No Rocket fiber
covered, but it's Xfinity, man. I blame capitalism. We can't get AT&T won't come here. AT&T tries to sell me Wi-Fi every time I walk into a Costco, and then they run my address and they're like, "Oh, we don't go there." I was like, "Okay, well, I'll stick with the people who want to be here. Thanks very much." You know.
I think UWM and Rocket are literally choking the bandwidth. They're taking up all the usable bandwidth from the local communities in Detroit.
I mean, Rocket did it right. They just did their own fiber. They just did it right downtown. You know. I love that.
Their own,
man.
Their own data center, their own internet company.
So
we work for it. We work for it here. It's not as cushy as things in Massachusetts and Vermont, where nobody actually has to work for anything. Frankly, Rick.
Well, because we don't believe
Detroit, we gotta hustle. We gotta build. We gotta hustle. We gotta go.
because we don't believe in capitalism in Vermont and Massachusetts either. So
That's what I'm saying.
It's the mentality, right?
We're all universal income people up here, you know.
It's the mentality that we have. We're grinders at heart, you know.
We're grinders.
That's why. That's what
we
it
don't
is.
let it bother us. We don't let it bother
Not at
us.
all.
Everyone's stacking in on Detroit and how cold it is. It is cold, but you know, you go to Minnesota, restaurants are open. You go to Detroit, they close. That's okay. So now what I was talking about, Jeremy, that in the 2000s, like Scott Cooley came up with a website called mortgagetechnologygraveyard.com. And so many tech companies raise capital. They think it's going to be super easy to add value, to penetrate, to grow market share. They have these beautiful, tech forecasts and revenue forecasts, subscription forecasts that almost are always overly ambitious. They underestimate the adoption and really the innovation fit of where a tech company sort of fits within the tech stack and how they play with other critical parts. And they realize that there's certain sacred grounds you don't cross, right? CRMs don't cross into LOSs. LOSs, really shouldn't cross into the CRMs. And now a lot of those rules have been rewritten because of the POS market, having sort of emerged in the mid, sort of 2016, 17, 18. But so what I was laying the groundwork for was Total Expert has done a great job in sort of finding a valid space amidst a lot of CRM companies that really have been either unimpressive or just what I would consider to be undercapitalized undercapitalized efforts that really have undermined their successes, Yeah. And so it's interesting that Velma, as I say, Velma is a CRM that a pseudo CRM that, John, you're probably familiar with, that is one of those undercapitalized efforts that simply never really got off the ground, but they're still out there, right? Yep. So what makes, give us a little background of Total Expert. How, where'd they get the capital? How do they manage those expectations, fit into the sector in light of the time when you had Mark Green's platform, top of mind, as not really being all that sophisticated of a CRM, but kind of a glitzy, kind of a video experience that they launched in 2013, 14, 15 that really got them their niche established. How did Total Expert emerge from the ashes of CRM, of sort of CRM in mortgage?
Yeah. So, we didn't start out as a CRM. And I think that, one of the biggest things is that we're not really a CRM. I think that the CRM acronym has evolved over time as being a contact record management system to now it can be a customer retention management system or communication, marketing, and retention system, right? So it's depending on how you think about and how you view the CRM space and what your needs are is what you need to look for. But we just thought differently. Number one, I think, when we started our company, we were just serving a co-marketing effort between realtors and loan officers, which is a big foundational piece of our platform today. But as we started to listen to our customers and ask and understand what their needs were, we started to build more for them. And I think that that's where a lot of these companies that may fail, are undercapitalized, overcapitalized, whatever we look at, they don't listen. They have a lot of people that build and think that they're building and solving a problem, but they don't know the foundational aspects of what the problem actually is. And so I think what our with Jeff Walton and Sue Woodard early on, and in combination with our CEO Joe Wellew, we really listened and understood what the industry was asking for. And it was something different. It wasn't the same old, we're going to build a CRM and we're going to have campaigns. No. When you think about what you said is crossing over from Encompass or from a POS to an LOS what our platform is now evolved into is a centralized ecosystem of all the data that a lender has to then drive off of that automation and communication. And so when you think about CRM, it goes so much more than just contact or customer record management. You've got to actually do something now with that data. And that's where we've pivoted to. And so how did we come out of the ashes? A, listening, B, understanding, and C, focusing on the success in our platform. No platform's ever going to be perfect, but if we can listen, we can understand, and we can commit to the success of our platform in their environment, then we all win. And so when you think about, where we're at as a company and where the rest of the CRMs are, yes, there are a lot of cool tools that are out there that are evolving, just like we did, and we're watching a lot of those. But I think that the foundational aspect of our company that is focused on the customer and understanding what the industry is needing, and then supporting it from that kind of the side of the fence, as opposed to we're going to build this and this is how you're going to use it, makes it a much different experience.
Jon, we talk a lot at this on this show about lenders, and like, you talk to everybody. If you were advising a vendor, a tech company, on how to actually evolve with the customer while you are bringing them into the future that could and should exist, I find that to be the hardest thing I've ever encountered in terms of this adoption, success or failure in this industry, which is to say, if you just ask the customer what they want, they're going to tell you a slightly better version of what they're doing today. But where you're really trying to go. And so you've got a parallel path, giving them what they can consume, what is going to help their business, what they say they want, listening, giving. We heard you, we responded. We heard you, we responded. But you're also going to have to draw this product roadmap forward so that you actually evolve. You actually take them somewhere that is valuable. Can you talk a little bit about managing that internally?
Yeah,
because I think a lot of people...
You guys are in Michigan. You can't miss the chance to use the Henry Ford quote. People want to pass your horses.
I was going to ask him about that. Yes.
Yeah, I do think you have to manage the expectations of the customer, because if you're asking them what they want, honestly, they don't know. They're going to list off 700 things that they want. But what you need to flip that, and what you need to understand is kind of like the Disney model of what are you trying to achieve with all of those things that you want, right? And then start to understand it and say, okay, this lender is trying to achieve this out of our platform, and then go to 4 or 5 other lenders and talk to them about those same things, right? Get a quorum of people that understand that this is a goal of somebody, and this is how, because again, wants, needs, and then what the goal is of what the outcome is of all those wants and needs are completely different. They could say, we want this button to say this, but what they're actually asking for is they want this button there to say this, but then do 3 or 4 different things in the background. So you've got to understand and go deeper than just what do you want. It's like, okay, if we gave you all of this, well, then what's the end goal of that? What does this give you? What does this get you? And then it's not just talking to one customer, it's bringing them into a group and saying, okay, well, this is their idea. What do you all think of this? Right? Because again, the industry is we're all solving, the industry solves for the same things. We're trying to put borrowers into applications, into homes, and then bring them back, right? And along with all of those, with that process, there are different strategies in which other lenders do it within, right? But you just got to understand what that end goal is, and then start to build the product and build the innovation around that.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Mike.
Not
Mike. I was reading Michael Keller's comment. Jon, how would you describe Total Expert's unique contribution to sales and marketing automation? Is there? Do they just do what other people are doing better? What's unique about Total Expert?
It's the ability to connect to all the data, right? So one of the things that this industry is not good at is A, buying technology, B, deploying technology, and C, orchestrating that technology for the common goal of the actual organization. And so what our platform does is bring that all together, bring all the data and centralize one true contact profile, right? So that we can then automate off of and listen for that data, listen for those intent signals, listen for the insights that we're providing with customer intelligence to then drive the next best communication, drive the next best opportunity, and serve that up to the loan officer. So it is much different than most of the other companies that are out there, because we're always listening, we're always looking, we're always automating. Because when you think about adoption is a really weird metric to manage with every company. It's different, right? I have one company that bought our platform that knows that 20% are going to log in, but they need to automate the shit out of everything else. Sorry, are we allowed to swear on this podcast?
Sure are. It's real talk.
Yeah, we keep
real
it real.
Fridays.
It's real talk. I got
Say
you.
whatever you want.
You're from Detroit. You're from Detroit.
Yeah, there we go. But it's understanding the data and then knowing what to do with it, helping our customers understand what to do with that data and those intent signals, and then also really enriching the contact profile so that it doesn't get stale. And that's our next biggest initiative, is making sure that that contact profile that lives within our platform, within a lender's instance, is always evolving as the customer evolves.
Yeah, as a bit of an outsider with our relatively new platform in the industry, NewZip, we haven't even formally done any partnership with Total Expert at this point, but we have some mutual clients, and it's a really good experience compared to any of the other systems that we integrate with our lenders. So I think it's just a good example of like you guys playing well with the rest of the industry, the rest of the data, for sure.
Brock, I'm pretty sure that we just announced that we're doing something together internally. So now it's out.
Yeah, we're hoping for that. I wasn't going to say that, but that's good news. But yeah, even before we've like strategically done anything, just the clients.
Well, what are you doing?
I have no idea, to be quite honest with you, Rick. I just know that it's coming.
The plan is that you got what the term customer journeys, for Total Expert. Is that what you call it?
I think so. Yeah.
So we built an optional kind of real estate journey for lenders that's going to be powered by Total Expert, that if they want to deploy for clients that don't have a real estate agent, real estate market data, the option to get a real estate agent, stuff like that.
Yep. And when you think about it, I'm reading this here, that the value prop is the data and the customer intelligence, yes, but it's also putting that into motion to organizationally understand the strategy in which you're going to communicate with that consumer, right? Understanding where they are at in the process with that lender or that bank, and then communicating to them as a real human being and not just a marketing target or a number in a queue, right? So that's where the data comes into play, is understanding that data and then being able to dynamically leverage all of that information to communicate directly to that human being that's on the other end of that transaction. Flips it over from being a transactional email and more, personal and humanized.
I think one of the things that I've always struggled with in terms of innovation in this industry that you alluded to is like we tend to see startups or other solutions pop up and solve one thing for one person, right? And they tend to have some success. And I've always been critical, like, okay, we spent all this time and money, we solved one thing for one person, and that's how we end up with 72 different vendors, from lead gen, point of sale, all the way through loan delivery. And what I think is the secret sauce for vendors and tech platforms that support lenders that make it is they have a way, and you have a way of talking about the one thing for the one person over here, and over here, and over here, and over here, and behind the scenes, incorporating that into a strategy versus solving one thing for one person and stopping. I think like that makes a big difference between size and longevity in this industry.
Well, I mean, when you think about that one thing, again, we started with that one thing. We started with co-marketing.
You got to start somewhere, no doubt.
But it's also understand. I mean, vaporware is a big issue in our industry. Is companies just saying that they can do all these things and they just can't do it, right? But owning that one thing that you're really good at and being really good at that, and then understanding, okay, what is my next thing? What can I add on to this to make it even better, and continue the evolution of that product instead of just owning. Like, again, the POS space is here. I personally believe that you just stack number ones. Buying a big conglomerate of solutions, and one always suffers. I always say that stack the best in class, and then you're going to have a best in class experience. But you have to understand how to orchestrate that experience within the technology that you're building. And And it's that way. You know, I mean, if you're going to be that one single thing, be really good at it and then understand where you're going to go next and communicate that out.
Yeah. Now, can I use that as a segue? I saw Kelleher posted on the comments about like UWM closing loans, title review, AOLs, closing. You know, one of the things that I think TPO lenders in particular have been really good at least from what I heard you just say, Jon, is thinking that way. Like, I'm really good at this. What more can I take from the broker and do and help with? What more tools do I need? I need, you know, I'm going to put in these pieces throughout the process. And I think the big TPO lenders like UWM Rocket and others are kind of thinking the way you just described to some degree is, I have this thing I'm good at. Now I can do even more. I can take this piece. And it may or may not work. I mean, Mike is asking about like, what about this particular piece, the closing, the title insurance? But I actually think just the mindset is the mindset that a lot of lenders should have for their staff and their salespeople, even outside of the TPO context, to say, what more can I delegate to this technology? What more can I have technology do? What more can I ask Total Expert to do? What more can I ask my LOS to do? And I think that's actually the best way to do this, solve a problem, pick up the next one, and actually make progress, at least in this industry. I don't know if that resonates, but that to me is like how we're talking about it now.
And I think you need to take a look down a rung and not talk about the UWMs and the Rockets, but the EPMs and the PRMGs that know what they're really good at, and they stay in their lane because that's what they're really good at. They know that there's those bigger companies that are out there, Rocket and UWM, taking the market share, but let's just be who we are, and that's going to be okay for our business. And then continuously ask and innovate to the consumers that they're the lenders that they're serving, that are serving consumers, and then add products and add different functionality and different things and grow that way.
Go
ahead, Rick.
Well, I was going to say, you know, Jon, what I get the idea of the intersection of data for better sort of reporting and sort of consumer intelligence and then making that actionable on behalf of the organization or on behalf of the loan officer. Like I get that, but when you're starting and you're rolling out as an organization, that's only as good as the data that you have in your system, right?
Oh yeah.
But again, which requires adoption, both from a company standpoint, but also adoption from within an organization, right? But what is beyond sort of the interconnectivity of the data? What is prior to that? What is that unique contribution? What is that feature that you would say that like we either did this better, or like when Top of Mind came out with their platform, I always loved Mark Green, always loved sort of Top of Mind as a sort of a very singular solution around communication and loan status updates. That was kind of their thing, right? They said that we're a CRM, and I was always like, Mark, you're not a CRM. I look at you more as a communication protocol so you can provide loan status updates to, you know, realtors, loan officers, consumers alike, and title companies and appraisers and so on and so forth. That was their big thing in like 2013, these little quirky little videos that I thought were super annoying, but like realtors loved them, right? So then once I started looking at it from the perspective of the realtor, I was like, okay, well, you know, Mark, high five to Mark. Like Mark did a good job here in providing something that no one else was providing up to that point, right? Still not a CRM, still not a contact manager, really not a reporting or analytics solution, but they did this one thing really well that no one else was doing, right? And that was really not the genesis, but that they were still pretty small in 2012 and 13. They just started to sort of gain momentum in the years that followed because of that feature. What do you think is the feature or the actual? Jeremy, you had said this in one of your previous podcasts when you were talking about like that singular definable product or attribute about the organization that really defines you as a tool vendor or a lender. Like, I forget what the term that you used, Jeremy. Do you remember? It was like a singular definable quality or characteristic. Do you remember? It was something to that effect of like an organization should know that about themselves in order to articulate the value that they deliver.
Yeah, I often talked about it, not in necessarily a single word, but like, know what you believe. You have to have a belief about the market. You have to say fundamentally, like, this is our strategy. This is our wedge. And so if you know that, you then can build your strategy off of it. So like, I'm thinking of it in the context of when I talk to like Dave Savage or Brian View. I know what I believe the mortgage loan officer's going to do in this market, short and long term, and I build my business around that belief. I think those companies that have that perspective aren't ever chasing, so to speak, the next technology or the next fad or the next product. They go, I have a certain belief. So I don't know if I did have a singular word, but what I would say is, like, know thyself is really good advice. And I think a lot of times, like, you know, I'm thinking of a conversation right now I had with Frank Fiore at Matchbox, where it's like, you have a ton of people applying technology and going, tell me what my process is with this new technology, versus saying like, I know my process. I know my culture. I've applied a process to it. Now I just need technology to do that for me better, faster, stronger, more effective, versus going to a vendor and being like, how do I do this? How do I do you, the vendor? It's like, no, the vendor's process is not going to solve your problem. You have to have the process and then find the right technology that accelerates it. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that belief, you know.
Yeah, Jeremy, I agree with that 100%. Is that you know thyself before you can go out and find out a solution. But I mean, I think, Doc, for the answer to your question, I mean, automation would be the number one key differentiator, and the data management. Now, with that being said, when we go to a deployment for a lender, we make sure that with the data that we're ingesting has integrity. And from that, what we can do is start to serve up opportunities to the loan officers, whether it's our focus views, which is one of our legacy pieces of technology, which we're now moving to concerted lead lists here in the next week or so, and have some really cool things that are coming out on that. But really giving the loan officer the ability to not have to log in every single day and spend all of their day in a platform that can be kind of cumbersome, right? But knowing where to go and where to find the opportunities to close the next 1, 2, or 3 loans is the most important piece, I think, to our platform and how we leverage the data in a much different way than other platforms do.
Right on. So, you know, it took me a while, John, on this show to like figure out, kind of to your point, like how to say some of the things we're trying to say, I guess is the best way to describe it about this stuff. But I'm really still struggling, especially this week, that we continue to solve, like, not even the problem, but we continue to look at the stuff that I would describe as like not fundamental to solving some of the key problems. Like, we don't have a good way of looking across the industry, or even larger than that, across housing, and saying, like, how do we think about either technology or just regulatory levers, lobbying levers, like economic levers, to like truly solve some of these problems. And like, I'm pivoting a bit away from what you were just talking about.
I know where we're going with this one.
But like, to me, like, you know, 2 things happened this week that drove me crazy a little bit. One was Freddie Mac's second lien announcement, and one was the reaction to the sort of FSOC Treasury Department speaking about like the non-bank risk, systemic risk. But I thought both of them had a common thread, and I do think it's a segue from what we were talking about now, which is like, how do you solve problems? How do you solve big problems in this industry? And the thread is, we continue to do this thing where we're not addressing the big thing. We're not lowering costs, manufacturing costs or closing costs. We're not making credit more accessible in innovative ways. And yet we're seeing these articles that are like speed bumps or even roadblocks to where we're trying to go, because it's like non-banks are risky. And the thing that drives me crazy about this, and this is what I am leading to a question, I promise, John. But the thing that drives me crazy is a month ago, everybody on LinkedIn wants to talk about non-banks as fundamental to the American dream, fundamental to the economy, part of the GDP, how big and meaningful they are. And then the government goes, whoa, they are super big and meaningful. That's scary. That's a systemic risk. And we go, no, we're not that big. We're not that risky. We don't really do anything. It's like, that is not a coherent strategy. That's actually a dysfunctional strategy, because you're trying to have your cake and eat it too. You're trying to say, I'm actually cornerstone to the GDP. I'm cornerstone to the American dream. And then as soon as we are recognized as such, it's like, but don't make us do anything about it. And I am not criticizing. I think this is an important conversation to have. But like, what was your reaction seeing this dialogue play out? You've been a big, I think, cheerleader, and I mean that in a good way, for these companies, for this industry. Like,
yeah.
Well, and so how do you balance that in your mind?
So I remember when the CFPB came out with the new TRID disclosures, and they had that nice big closing, the CD and all that neat stuff back in 2014 or 15. And I was at a conference, and in Michigan, they had 500 lawyers and people in a room. And what came out of it was this new closing disclosure. And in Michigan, because of the way we pay the title insurance and some of the ways that we do things in Michigan with transfer taxes and things like that, they couldn't get the TRID to tie out the right way. And it took 3 or 4 months after it rolled out to actually figure that out. And so what do I think about it? I think that people that don't understand our industry shouldn't be writing regulations or policies for our industry. That's the first thing. Bob Brooksmith said it best. We've got a knot of regulatory things that are going on. I read that whole article and his speech that he delivered this week. And he's, honestly, if you don't know, I'm sure we all know Bob. But if you've ever had a conversation with him, he's one of the coolest dudes you'll ever meet. Guy's wicked smart, and he gives a shit about our industry more than anybody. There's way too many people writing rules, writing regulations, and building out, and saying things about what we as an industry do that have zero knowledge about how we actually go about doing it. Like, get rid of title insurance. I mean, that's the president of our country says we're going to get rid of title insurance, or junk fees. Where are the junk fees within mortgage? I mean, we can talk about that all day long, but people are making statements about what this industry has done to drive us out of the Great Recession, to pull us through COVID, and we're now under attack again. It doesn't make any sense to me, but that just tells me that people that are uninformed are making policies and saying things that have no clue what this industry actually does on a daily basis to provide the American dream. We can talk about how housing is out of control and how the appreciation of housing is blocking out 10,000 consumers or first-time home buyers, minority buyers every single day. We can talk about the fact that rates are at 7.5%. We could talk about the NAR settlement. We could talk about all of those things in an administration that sits here and communicates to the American people that they're about affordable housing. They're about minority home ownership, or they're about all of these things. Their actions and their words are directly against all of those things. And it drives me nuts.
Yeah, I mean, I'm biased as a generalist. I'm admittedly a generalist, real estate, mortgage, title. I do these things kind of across. And so I'm a little biased as a generalist, but it feels like why I jumped to this so quickly in my mind and got so emotional about it is like the regulatory knots you're describing are very similar to the conversation we were having about tech vendors. I saw one thing for one person. I saw one thing for one person. These regulatory knots exist because we write one thing for one rule. We write one thing for one rule. We write one thing for one rule. And then when you step back and look across them, it's like, well, that doesn't actually work with that over there. In the vacuum, those two rules were written by people who do deeply care about the consumer or the industry or whatever. But there was nobody looking at that one and looking at that one being written somewhat simultaneously and going, hold on a second. And so what I took away from Bob's speech was this national housing view. What I took away from Bob's speech is like, there's nobody looking across housing and going, how does all this interact? How does
there's no accountability,
economic stimulus, domestic policy, mortgage finance, housing supply, title insurance, real estate commissions, how do they all work in tandem? How do they all work together? And so I
think there's
I
think there's like a very like misguided general view that banks are the one, like actual banks, retail banks are the ones doing a lot more mortgage. And I think people outside the industry, think that these mortgage companies these mortgage specialists, non-banks, independent mortgage banks are so much less of the business. So I wonder if that's just what's coming sort of to light with all these different conversations, is like different policymakers are like just learning that like, oh, like the Chase and Wells aren't doing mortgage like they used to, those kind of things.
I think it's tough. I do. I mean, I think it's tough, and I'll let you jump in. I didn't mean to cut you off, but like,
that's good.
Mortgage servicers are the ones that hold that sort of ongoing aspect of capital retention risks. How well capitalized you are is actually going to indicate how you serve customers over the 30-year mortgage. The liquidity and stability of servicers is very different than originators. A lot of originators are seller servicers that do both, but not all. And so, Brock, I think what I've been struggling with a little bit is kind of what you said, which is, yes, I think there's an awareness now about how much of the volume gets picked up and served on the origination side by non-bank IMBs, and how much they've done, IMBs in particular, have done to serve every community, put people or access to credit in every single community across the country. But I also think that that's largely viewed as a sales and marketing function. That's not viewed as a systemic function, right, the way servicing is, or right, that the way banks have to hold capital against their operations, reserves, risk, losses, market fluctuations. But we kind of saw this week, it all crashed together. And people were referring to right, independent mortgage banks, independent mortgage players as one thing. And really that sales and marketing function is viewed very differently in DC than this servicing function.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I don't think that costs are going to go down, though. I mean, I see your question there. I mean, costs, the only thing that happens with this is costs go up. If you think about getting rid of junk fees, well, the lender's going to have to pay for those. So that means that the cost of a mortgage is going to go up through rate, right? You think about the NAR settlement, like somebody's paying for all of this. Like it's not going to go for anywhere. It's going to show up somewhere, and it's going to end up being higher rate. And
well, that's the junk fee. Yeah,
that's an inherent problem.
Fee. That's the junk fee perception versus reality, right? Because of Dodd-Frank, we can now assign this fee is done by this third party, or this fee is assigned to this entity. I think what a lot of people are saying is, what's behind that? What's actually happening? What does that fee represent? And like unlocking that, I think would clear up a lot of this, like what is a junk fee and what isn't a junk fee conversation. People are just using junk fee to mean like the laundry list of fees that, yeah, we now know what the label of the fee is, but like, what did it do for the loan? What did it do for the mortgage company? What did it do to like objectively lower risk or objectively satisfy a third-party service?
Back in 2001, when I started in this industry, the junk fees on a mortgage transaction were absolutely incredible. Like these guys were getting charged for, if they wanted there were water fees. It was stupid how many fees. I mean, Rick, I'm sure you remember back then. I mean, what this industry was able to do. But since, the CFPB came out with all of those rules against all of those things, which should have never happened anyways, but they did. Now they're attacking their own rule by saying, we've got to get rid of the junk fees, in which they have actually, given us the regulations around to be able to charge, because they are necessity to the mortgage process. So it's just kind of funny how this all comes full circle on the same group that is actually, wrote the regulations are now attacking their own regulation. This is wrong.
Or in that moment of pause, I'll jump in. Or saying like, now that we were able to identify each fee individually on a sheet, the CD, now we can actually start to pick apart each one and go, well, what's that for? Yeah, okay, it goes to this third-party service provider, but the lender ends up being responsible for like, why'd you pick that provider and why are you willing to pass through that invoice? Does it do what you say it does? So I see it more as a threat of that, a threat of like nitpicking every line item and going, are we sure that's for that? Are we sure that was worth it? You know,
Potentially.
but yeah,
anything's
but
possible. The government doesn't come in with a scalpel. They come in and just blow shit up.
Yeah, that'll be one that I think. So between the pressure of what I've been talking a lot about lately, John, is the confluence of factors. And when I mean by confluence, the home affordability, the lack of supply, the economic conditions driving rates up. I think it's all kind of coming together at the exact same time that makes like, who's to blame? Particularly when you get like more mainstream media focus on it, like general media focus, not housing specific media. It becomes a like, well, where somebody's going to take blame for this like generational issue about lack of access to home ownership.
Yeah. And the regulating industries are never going to do this. They're always going to do this.
Right. And so that's what I'm saying. Like the other thing that I kept thinking about a lot since Bob's speech was about this national housing director. I actually, this is going back 5 or 6 years. I remember when I got involved with government affairs at Rocket, and I would ask, like, how come this is all over the place? How come HUD does 30%, FHFA does this 60%, let's say, VA's got their thing, USDA's got their thing. The home builders aren't part of any of that somehow. The real estate lives out over here. And so like housing's all over the place in the government. And so Bob's point in his speech about like who on the Domestic Policy Council owns housing, who in the White House owns housing. I think those are fair and really interesting questions. And if we're going to continue to talk about housing as one of these core needs of the community, which we all agree it is, its ability to stimulate economic activity, its ability to address generational wealth issues, underserved community issues. I think one of the best ways to stabilize this country, to stabilize communities, is equity. People want to have 100%. Equity in something. People want to get access to wealth building products. And if in housing we don't come together and figure this out, people are going to find equity elsewhere. They are going to go. And one of the rants I've been on lately, which apparently I've just like climbed onto my soapbox again here, is people love to make fun of influencers, right? Oh, all these Gen Z folks want to be an influencer on TikTok, want to be an influencer on Instagram. I actually don't see it that way. The way I see it is when you graduate college, you look for where the economic opportunity is. You look for where the money is and you go to it. When I graduated college, everybody was packing up and going to Silicon Valley. Not because they thought it was easy, but because that's where the money was. That's where things were happening. That's where the job was. When I'm graduating college today and I look out across the economy, what do I see? Where's the money? The money's in media. The money's in clicks. The money's in advertising. The last decade has taught us that. Look at the size of Google. Look at the size of Meta. So to me, it's like if we give people economic pathways, they'll take them. We're doing a poor job of it. And as a result, they just look for where the economic opportunity is and try to get at it, try to get some. Well, and so for me, it's like, how does housing become the next platform that creates opportunity, that gives people opportunity? There are jobs in housing, jobs that create housing. There's a lot to be done here. There are big challenges.
The thing is, Jeremy,
housing.
We need to have an administration that understands housing, right? You can't, on one hand, applaud the IMBs for their work in Black and brown communities, and at the same time put onerous capital restrictions on those same IMBs that will end up undercutting their commitment to Black and brown communities. You see what I'm saying? Like, in other words, who controls the HELOC market?
Banks
and credit unions.
Depositories, right? Depositories are notoriously undercommitted to Black and brown communities, okay? In comparison to the results and the performance that independent mortgage banks deliver on that promise or on that commitment, okay? Much more agile, much more innovative, all the things that the report recently by the Treasury just sort of applauded that IMBs have. The problem is, in order to unlock equity and home equity for the average consumer, there needs to be better channels and better products and that within the IMB space. Otherwise, it's always going to be in the chokehold of the American Bankers Association, the ABA, and in the lack of regulatory sort of guidance on this is just, it's deafening. But you have to have an administration that's going to clear away those obstacles on the depository front, so we can have a greater commitment to unlock the equity within the home of most American consumers.
I think that every administration over the last 12 years, 20 years has had a commitment to the Black and brown community, to the underserved, to low to moderate income families. They've done a very good job of speaking, but the problem is that their actions have done the exact opposite of what they've spoke about. And so I agree with Jeremy that there should be somebody that holds all of these agencies accountable for the rules, the regulations, and the understanding of the actual housing and mortgage market. Because if a single industry can take down the American economy, there should be somebody making sure that the regulations are all working together to drive for one common goal. And we don't have that. We have 5 different agencies, 10 different agencies, whatever, with rules overlapping and all of that. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. So I agree. I love Bob's take on that, and having a national housing director that sits in a cabinet, and that's what that guy lives and breathes every single day. That only helps us.
Yeah, that was my view, was that does help bring some of these things together, because the administration is, what I was saying earlier, is any administration is just acting on human nature. Solve this one thing here, say this one thing here, say this one thing here, because there is no coherent view to say, how would we use our levers and strategies to drive true structural economic change that benefits entire communities, entire cities, entire people groups. Like you bring up HELOCs, you're going to get me started on another soapbox, right? Like Freddie Mac doesn't need to get into the HELOC business, the HELoan business, to solve this problem. Like, this is not what needs to happen. To me, that is just another example of doing something that is window dressing to the problem. Like, we're going to pile on another product to the people that already own homes, already have a low first rate mortgage. Like, it's a noble cause to want to be able to renovate your home, improve your home, invest in your family and your future with the equity you earned. Wanting to serve that cause is a noble cause. So Freddie Mac's doing the right thing in that sense. But there's nobody crying out being like, I couldn't get a HELOC. There was no market need for them to step in and pile on another product and another benefit to the people who have already gotten it all. They've already gotten all the benefits. Like, there's no need to spend our time and resources on that. It's a snooze alarm to the true problem and the true work that we need them doing. And so I don't know that I have thought a lot about, like, all these regulations need to get cleared out. I think they need a coherent strategy. And then these things can start working together, because I don't think that Fannie and Freddie have made fundamental changes to the numbers, the portfolio of homes served by the GSEs. That's, I think, what I'm trying to get at and think more about. But it just seems like it's another snooze alarm to actually dealing with the problem. And I felt like, at least in some way, the National Housing Director was a way to shine a light on that a little bit. And that's how those two things are related in my mind. But we're going to do it again. We'll roll out second liens. Everyone will go sell them to the people who already have mortgages, and then rates will drop, and then we'll refi everybody, and then we don't actually have to focus on the real problems. We don't actually have to focus on what we really need to do.
I think we talked about this a week or two ago on this show, but the election year, it's like you'd think you'd hear some extra promises on housing, promises on home ownership, but
there's too many. There's too many. There's too many other issues there's way too many other issues to focus on that right now. And that's the problem, is that there's so many other issues that need to be addressed, that this one is a foundational issue that America and this industry needs to deal with, but they're not, because they're focused on getting elected. And this is not this isn't something that's going to push vote.
Yeah, it's like not a winning issue right now. It's
not this year. It's not
all bad stuff. Yeah,
Could be. It could be if we had an actual policy conversation, but this last week, it's not about policy, clearly. So trying to get it to be is me just shouting in the wind. So it's not going to be about policy. It's
about saving somebody $400 on junk fees on a mortgage. That's what it's about.
Well, that's what I'm saying, man, is like people are trying to start somewhere because they're desperate. I think there are people out there desperate to elevate the conversation. And it's like, where do I even begin? I'll at least start with that. But I think what we're saying is that doesn't feel like the right place to start or a meaningful place to start. But you like to get housing to be a national platform issue, to get there to be a national housing director, to get there to be a presidential candidate stepping up and saying, here's my strategy to bring equity to communities, to like use it as an economic driving force to help all of us in the economy move forward. That would be an interesting platform. All right, I did it. I'm sorry. I'll step back off my soapbox now. I will shut up and we can go about our days. But Jon, thanks for always sparking my energy. I find that whenever we're together and talking, like, I always get going because you have a way of bringing that bringing those thoughts and that interesting perspective that keeps me going. So I appreciate your time, man.
For good or worse, that's fine. I love it.
Well, yeah, we'll do it. We do it about policy and we do it about college football. So it works across the board, man. It's all good.
It does.
Right on. Good to see you.
Jon, are you coming to New York this week?
I will not be attending the New York Secondary Conference. And I'll miss it this year. I've got I have my family issues. Not family issues, but family commitments.
Family obligations. Yeah, right on.
And obligations that are preventing me from going out there.
I'll be at NS3 hanging out with title people in Florida. If anybody is watching this and going to be there, I will see you there. But I will not be in New York as a result.
All right.
Well,
Doc, are you going?
Yeah, well, I'm in New York, so I'm going to the
walking over. Brock's gonna walk over.
Walking over to the various receptions and hang out with Dr. Rick Rock.
Let's go.
Nice.
I'm excited for it. I'll be there Monday, Tuesday, committed. I'm excited. A lot of meetings.
So if anybody's going to be out there, make sure that you connect with Doc Rock and Brock, because two great people to connect with.
That's the new Friday show. The new Friday show is Doc Rock and Brock. You just nailed it. Doc Rock and Brock.
Let's go.
It. What else we got, fellas?
Cool. I got to go. That's what else we got. But it's good to see you, man. You guys can feel free to rock and roll. But I'll talk to y'all soon.
Talk to you guys later.